This is an illegal fleet under different flags. They refuse to buy oil because they are afraid of the January 10th sanctions. According to Vitaly Portnikov, without oil revenues, Putin will become completely different and will not be able to wage a bloody war. How quickly will new sanctions or Trump's agreement with the Saudis to increase oil production and lower prices hit the pain point of the Russian budget? There are things I agree with. There are things that happen differently. I fully agree that this is Putin's Achilles heel. The Russian war machine was sponsored, in particular, by hydrocarbons. This is a key source of income, although there are also grains. Gold has almost disappeared from the international market as a source of super profits for Russia. Metals and exports are not generating profits today. Hydrocarbons were to be the key. These are gas, oil, and oil products. Gas in Russia is already a subsidized sector. Gas is not profitable and consumes money from the budget. Russia exports oil products with varying success, imposing restrictions, importing and exporting at the same time, as it cannot ensure the storage of oil and oil products due to Ukrainian drone strikes. At best, this head will cook itself. The third is crude oil, which contains this organism and supports its vital activity. If this third head is cut, Russia will run out of hydrocarbon revenues. This head pulls the other two, but the agricultural sector remains. Other items will not allow Russia to collapse immediately. We cannot hope that the absence of Russian oil will lead to Russia's immediate demise. No, there is a safety margin, but Russia will feel it fully in a few months. Putin's regime must account for this. The consequences will be catastrophic. I was skeptical about this and have been saying for several years that we should not expect the oil price to fall below the waterline. The price of oil, which is essential for the economy, and the cost of its production are higher in Arab countries than in Russia. Because the standards of living are higher. These are no longer the poor people of the Abrahamic treaties who could pump oil cheaper than water. Today, these are developed countries with high standards of living, for which an oil price below $60 is a disaster. In Russia, a price of 60 will be quite normal. What can you expect? Why did Trump's idea of an OPEC price cut fail? OPEC Plus decided at the meeting not to collapse the price of oil and not to increase production. A quasi-embargo on Russian oil may be effective, but it is worth consulting experts. We are already seeing this in the refusal of India and China to buy Russian oil. Russia can be pushed out of the markets by replacing its oil with Saudi and American oil, using it as a policy tool. Buying American or Saudi oil ensures loyalty to the Trump administration. By buying Russian oil, countries create risks, increase logistics costs, and run the risk of sanctions that could block supplies. Risks should rise to the point where Russian oil will simply be abandoned and replace it with oil from the Saudis and the United States. This will reduce the price on the international market, as the Arabs will compensate for the losses by increasing sales. They are entering new markets strategically. The U.S. will benefit by exporting oil, lowering domestic prices, and attracting Saudi investment. We are talking about between $600 billion and $1 trillion, which could be a payoff for U.S. support in promoting Saudi oil. This is a mutually beneficial collaboration for the United States, the Saudis, and, although not immediately, for us as well. The EU intends to introduce the 16th package of sanctions. Russian liquefied natural gas will not be included yet, but aluminum will be. Brussels plans to completely abandon its energy dependence on Russia by 2027, leaving a gap. The aluminum package, which also brought in revenue for Russia, would be good for us and bad for the Kremlin. Sanctions should have a shock effect at the beginning and a cumulative effect in the long run. The greatest adaptive capacity is long-term. If sanctions are not tightened, Russia will adapt to them. They need to be gradually strengthened. The package will not include gas, Rosatom, or other important issues for Russia. Aluminum will hit Russia hard, as this sector is oriented to the Western market. Targeted attacks on logistics, technology, social stability, and production will continue. This sanctions package is important for the EU, not so much as a blow to the Russian economy, but as a demonstration of unity and readiness to increase pressure in the face of Trump and uncertainty, as well as discussions of possible negotiations with Russia to end the war. Oleg discusses EU-US unity amid turbulence and GDP contribution demands, influenced by Trump's stance, even indirectly, via Greenland. U.S. Secretary of State Rubio and EU diplomat Kallas hold first call. Kallas called the talk good, noting EU-US strength in unity. We awaited Rubio to discuss Ukraine, Iran, and China. How do you see the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian war and external threats from the party? Iran, Russia, China, and China. Will Europe act on a single plan? Yes, through their own parties, depending on their abilities and readiness. It will be a coordinated game, and Rubio spoke not only with Kaja Kallas, but also with counterparts from Britain, Germany, and France. And all of this happened in one day, so the package of consultations is obviously extensive. Rubio steps in and communicates his initial positions as Secretary of State to his partners. That is, what are the expectations from President Trump, the priorities of his State Department, and the start of cooperation with European partners? In particular, it had a section on the Russian-Ukrainian war. This is what the British say in their communique, forgetting the French and Germans. This issue is mentioned in the communique, but it is obvious that the conversation was also held there. But, Mr. Oleg, we see the Russian dictator appearing either standing or sitting in a car, with his short legs and other unattractive body parts spread out. Interviews with propagandist Zarubin last 2 to 10 minutes, depending on his availability. He says he wants to talk to the U.S., but not to Ukraine. According to the illegitimate Putin, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is not legitimate. Stefanchuk seems to have a special relationship with him, constantly mentioning the Istanbul talks. What do you make of these messages from Putin? These are messages for the global community. First, it is aimed at a foreign audience. They are related to Russia's interests in getting out of the trap that Trump has set for Putin. Trump immediately launched a diplomatic attack, which even parts of his entourage did not expect. This step was obviously either prepared quickly or in advance, but in a very narrow circle. But stretching is very simple. Ceasefire without any conditions. This is unacceptable to Putin. This is not in the interests of the Putin regime's survival and victory in the Russian-Ukrainian war. To say so would be to deprive ourselves of military leverage. Remember what I said, negotiations are possible, but only if the fighting stops. Russia has no other trump cards, energy, economic, or high-tech. Russia is absent from economic battle and has lost its influence. In all respects, they cannot dictate their will, even to Ukraine, let alone to the wider world. He cannot refuse this important offer. To throw away a helping hand, as Trump said, in fact, to Putin, whose economy is suffering, inflation is rising, and he is destroying Russia. These are all VCs. Trump said it will be either good or bad. He wrote this on his page. Thus, pressure on Russia is increasing, and most of Trump's team is eager to act. Trump likely agrees. Other statements suggest his team doubts Putin will end the war. There is a 100-day horizon for Kellogg, and there are already phrases about trying to complete, not finish. On oil and the price collapse, why lower the price if there is hope that Putin will end the war tomorrow? Washington understands what will happen. Putin needs to get out of this trap, which has a clear deadline. This deadline, although not explicitly stated, is in my opinion the third anniversary of the war. On this day, all the world's key media, not just Western ones, will react to the third anniversary of the invasion. It will ask, Trump has failed, 2 to 4 hours past any chances first defeat, or like Afghanistan. Trump needs to say, the hot phase of the war will not last more than 3 years. Negotiations. We will see how to end it, or to come up with new sanctions and say there will be no 4th year of war. Weapons for Ukraine or seized Russian assets. The phrase, now Putin, not America, will pay for the war on both sides. Trump's team knows exactly how to sell this to American voters, including his supporters. He has a good option, but he needs to get a response from Putin before he can make a move. Without Putin's response, Trump will act on a tough scenario. This will be the answer to Trump. Putin gives interviews to solve the Songkwa problem by moving in 3 directions. First, extend the time. Secondly, to introduce a package principle. Ukraine and the illegitimate government need to set up groups for negotiations. We need to hold elections. Only then can we talk about the completion of changes. We need to make new changes with China and other players. Putin called Xi Jinping several times to discuss how Trump would put pressure on China because of Russia's lack of action. This construction is a game of international chess and billiards, already being built by Trump's team. Its trajectory is clear. Putin has become important in this game, with interviews and other statements complementary to Trump, but aimed at turning a simple issue into a complex equation with many variables to manipulate. They can hide Putin's interests there and probably want to get rid of him as soon as possible. Oleg, thank you for this analysis, for your opinion and feedback. It was Oleg Sahakyan, a political scientist. Putin has almost no scenarios for stalling. He's trying to dissuade Trump because the administration wants quick and effective solutions to end the war without asking Putin in particular.